Every country in the world is trapped in a swamp of debt. The United States currently holds more than $38 trillion in debt, the highest level in its history. The European Union has around $14 trillion. Japan, nearly $9 trillion. Even oil-rich nations like Saudi Arabia, or export powerhouses like Germany and China, all of them are deeply entangled in debt. At this point, a global contradiction emerges. If debt is universal, is there a universal creditor? This is empire capital histories, where money, power, and history converge. And nothing is as simple as it seems. Debt is an invisible scaffolding. The modern world rises upon it. Every war, every crisis, every rise and collapse is built on this unseen structure of debt. And if you follow the chain of creditors far enough, you arrive at a conclusion you may not want to face. This debt has no external owner. The world is indebted to a system of its own creation. But that does not mean everyone benefits equally. Today, the planet carries more than $315 trillion in total debt. That figure is nearly 3 times the size of the global economy. How did we get here? We have to go back to the beginning. Long before credit cards and digital transfers, the idea of national debt was not born on Wall Street. It was born in war. In 1694, England was at war with France and had run out of gold. The crown turned to merchants for help. In exchange for continuous interest payments guaranteed by future taxes, the merchants financed the state. To manage this new system, the Bank of England was established. This was revolutionary. The state could now spend money it did not yet possess, and in return, creditors received something priceless, a promise of the state, a promise that could be bought, sold, and transferred. This was the birth of the government bond, the seed of the modern financial system. France copied it, the Netherlands refined it, the newly independent United States adopted it to finance its revolution and westward expansion. Global debt was no longer a sign of failure. It became a measure of credibility. The ability to borrow was the ability to govern. Empires once conquered land to seize gold. Now they issued bonds to collect interest. The battlefield had changed. The balance sheet was the new battlefield. Fast forward 3 centuries. Debt has become the world's largest export. The United States, $38 trillion. Japan, over $9 trillion. And global debt increases by $1 trillion every 100 days. Everyone is in debt. Every bank lends. Every citizen, through taxes, savings, and pension funds, is both debtor and creditor. So where does this chain of debt lead? Let's start with the United States. Because this debt is not just national, it is global. Roughly half of the $38 trillion is publicly held, meaning debt owed not to government agencies, but to investors. About 2/3 of those investors are American banks, pension funds, investment funds, insurance companies, and the Federal Reserve. The remaining third, around $9 trillion, is held by foreign entities. The largest creditor is Japan, with about $1 trillion, followed by China, with roughly $800 billion. Then come the UK, Luxembourg, and Belgium. So when people say the US owes China, that is technically true, but it represents only about 2% of total US debt. Most of America's debt is owed to America itself. The Treasury issues bonds. Banks and funds buy them. The Federal Reserve often buys them back and creates new dollars in exchange. Americans pay taxes. Those taxes pay bond interest. That interest flows back into American retirement accounts. This is a circular mirror. The debt is real, but the creditor is a reflection of the same system, and this circularity is not unique to the United States. It is global. Japan lends to the US through treasury bonds. The US lends to Europe via the IMF. Europe lends to developing countries through the World Bank. Developing countries park their foreign reserves in Western bonds, lending the money back. Everyone holds someone else's paper. Every promise is collateralized by another promise. It is like a poker table where everyone is borrowing chips from the next player, and the only rule keeping the game alive is this: no one leaves the table, but there is a fourth layer, and it is the most powerful one, the markets. Behind every government bond lies a vast network: hedge funds, pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, and central banks. They are the true credit referees. They decide who borrows cheaply and who pays the price to survive. When confidence breaks, currencies collapse, governments fall, and economies are restructured overnight. Democracy decides who governs. Markets decide who survives. And the greatest market maker of all, the high priests of the modern age, are the central banks. Central banks do not merely manage debt, they create it. When the Federal Reserve or the European Central Bank buys government bonds, they create new money in return. What is debt on one balance sheet is an asset on another. Every dollar in circulation represents a debt somewhere else. There is no such thing as debt-free money. Every coin, every banknote, every digital dollar carries an invisible IOU. For decades, this system stood on trust. As long as investors believed governments would pay the interest, even if not the principal, the game continued. But what happens when trust breaks? We already know. In Greece, 2010, debt became unpayable. Bondholders panicked. Interest rates exploded. The European Central Bank and the IMF intervened. But the bailout had a cost. Austerity, tax hikes, unemployment. For an entire generation, rescue meant sacrifice. In Argentina, recurring defaults turned debt into a national curse. In Sri Lanka, depleted reserves led to fuel shortages and political collapse. When the system breaks, creditors become visible. The IMF rating agencies, anonymous bondholders. But even after collapse, the same logic returns. New debt replaces old. Obligations are restructured. The machine restarts on the same balance sheet under new names. Because in the 21st century, debt was not designed to be repaid. It was designed to be rolled over. Governments do not plan to pay off their debt. Not now. Not ever. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is the economic policy of the modern world. Individuals repay principal. States treat debt like a subscription. They issue new bonds to pay off old ones. This is called refinancing. The real product is interest, the rent of stability. The global economy is now dependent on this rent, like a shark that must keep swimming to breathe. The United States will never clear $38 trillion. Japan has rolled its debt for decades, now exceeding 250% of GDP, yet interest rates remain near zero. Investors are not waiting for repayment. They are waiting for renewal, because government bonds are the safest collateral in the world. U.S. treasuries are not seen as liabilities. They are seen as assets. Pension funds hold them. Banks use them as collateral. Central banks treat them like money. If Washington tried to repay its debt in full, banks worldwide would lose their safest assets. Dollar supply would contract. Deflation and collapse would follow. Paying off the debt would destroy the very thing holding the system together. So governments do the opposite. They produce more, rhythmically. Debt has become the heartbeat of capitalism. When politicians talk about eliminating debt, they sell an illusion. The goal is not to erase debt. It is to keep it sustainable, serviceable, and believable. Because when belief ends, numbers lose meaning. And the most important point, saying we owe the debt to ourselves, is only half true. Interest payments are not evenly distributed. They flow from taxpayers and workers to those who hold the debt. Debt is not just a transfer between countries. It is a transfer between classes. That is why as global debt rises, inequality rises with it. Creditors are not evil. Debtors are not innocent. They are two faces of the same engine. But when the engine runs out of fuel, that is when the question, who is the creditor, stops being abstract and becomes personal. And at the top, there is no single face. Not China, not Wall Street, not the IMF. All of them, and us. The modern financial system turned debt into money. Governments produce it. Banks multiply it. Investors trade it. Citizens live dependent on it. Debt was once bondage. Today it is balance. But if that balance breaks, the illusion ends, and we remember what debt truly is. A promise that can never be held forever. When perspective changes, the questions change. History carries the answers. Let's discover where to look together. Subscribe.